Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Livestream. I hope you're all very well this evening. Let's see who we have on tonight. We have Gene T, great to see you. We have Killer moderating once again. Thanks so much for coming on. We have Colin, great to see you. The Freckled Bunny, great to have you on. Adrian, great to see you. Raven 1983 Witch, great to have you on too. We have Chatty Rat. We have Norflinger, News Channel. Oraman, great to see you once again. Draconic, hope you're well. We have Enzo the God, great to see you, Enzo. Buxton, great to see you too. Colin, great to have you on. Derek, great to see you. John O'Sullivan, hope you're well. Roisin, great to see you. Asperger's, great to have you on too. Hope you're well. Giblets for the Cats, great to see you. We have Nick Young, Nico. Who else have we got? David Monks, great to see you. CGM, great to have you on. Hope you're well. We also have Mad Monk, JW92. Katrina Bryce, great to see you. Good evening. How many letters on Sir Graham Brady's doormat now? I think we're close to 54, the magic number. I think we're very close. Now, it's difficult to know exactly how close we are or if it has been reached, but there is talk probably next Tuesday of a vote taking place on whether Boris Johnson, a vote of confidence or a vote of no confidence, as the case may be, for Johnson. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. Number 3, great to see you. We have also Mega Henry Baum, great to have you on. We have also Von Nakanizer, Ben Shaw, and so many more. Young Ralph, I see, is there too. So I hope everyone's very well. Verti, great to see you too. So I hope everyone is very well tonight. I hope you had a great weekend. I hope you enjoyed the Sunday brunch. Unfortunately, we weren't able to talk too much to Brendan. He had some technical problems. We're hoping to have him back again, or maybe we can organize, have a chat with him in another format. But I'll keep you posted on that. So I hope everyone is very well. Hope you had a great weekend, and we'll jump straight into what's happening here tonight. So we're going to talk, of course, about the cost of living. Boris Johnson's, how long will he stick around? Every time I bring up the idea that Boris Johnson is for the chop, it tends to go away after a bit. And almost every time say, well, maybe this is the time he's going to go. I think we're closer than ever before, because if letters are going to the 1922 committee, it means that Graham Brady is receiving letters from important MPs. No one on the front bench yet, and I wouldn't expect that. It would be very damaging for Johnson if somebody from the front bench sent a letter to the 1922 committee. We don't know the names of everyone. It's kept quite private, and we won't know the result of the vote for some time. But it's looking likely that there's a vote next week. But before we get to that, I just want to talk about Brexit. Of course, it says here. So, as you know, there's a move away from metric. Of course, move away from metric to imperial measurements. Like we didn't have those before, for example, a 37-inch TV or a pint of beer. No, none of that existed. It can only exist now because of Brexit. Well, although the UK is still using litres when it comes to petrol, and they haven't talked about moving to pints of petrol or gallons of petrol. I think in the past they used to sell petrol by the gallon, but that's about, I think it's 4 litres, which is a lot to be carrying around. So I think they went back to selling it by the litre. Also, if you sell it by pint, it actually looks really cheap. Just you'll be getting less, and you're thinking it's cheaper. Anyway, this is the opinion from businesses it's not a very good idea to switch to imperial. It makes no sense. Reaction to plan to revive imperial measurements in the UK. Matt Tandy is feeling the pressure. He may be the manager of a fabric and craft shop, but he's also only 26 years old. As such, being asked whether he thinks 3 yards is longer or shorter than 2.5 meters is causing him undue stress. This is one I need to get right, don't I? He said before, sighing with relief when his answer 3 yards is in fact longer is correct. Nearby, a shopper more advanced in years smirked at Tandy's hesitancy. His anxiety may soon be mirrored by much of the nation, with Boris Johnson reported to be planning to revive the use of imperial measurements. The UK currently uses a mix of imperial and metric measurements. Think miles per hour, but litres of petrol. But the former is faster becoming a memory for younger Britons. Younger people are more familiar with metric. The older generation are more familiar with imperial. And as I said before, Brexit is about going backwards, not going forwards, going backwards. And, returning to some sort of idea of Britain in the past. And, there are sort of quirky aspects of it, like, for example, the measurement. But there are also more sinister aspects, this idea of, we want to keep foreigners out because we want to return to a time when, when you went into your local supermarket, the people in the supermarket spoke like you and the people looked like you. And this is red meat to the racist voter bloc. Anyway, it goes on to say Tandy, a manager in Accahan in Shrewsbury town centre, is nonplussed by the idea of going back to imperial, considering he's too young to remember quarts of sweets or fruit by the pound, though. He does very well in the Guardian's Imperial versus Metric quiz, only failing to guess that a pint of lager is more than 550 millilitres. Chris Carter, 45, is enjoying a pint of lager in the sunshine nearby. Despite his choice of drink, he wrongly thinks a pint is 545 millilitres, when in fact it's 568 millilitres in the UK. He fares better on questions about distance and height. The idea of reintroduction is nonsense, he says. Why change something that works? It makes no sense. You're going to have all the school kids that have learnt the metric system who have now to switch to the old imperial measurements. Carter, who voted Conservative in the last election, thinks there's one reason and one reason only that Boris Johnson is bringing the change in. He's taking a stab in the dark to try and cover up his misdeeds. As I said, this is someone who I voted for. I voted for him. Look, he's correct. This is about Boris Johnson throwing some red meat to the base. Look, we're going to wind back the clock. This should keep the people who voted for Brexit happy, or less angry, because these people are never happy. Sticking with this, it's sticking with Brexit, another story. It says here, same nightmare week after week, UK firms fed up with post-Brexit EU trade. And look, businesses are already struggling. And the idea of bringing in new measurements that they would have to calculate, they would have to put, labels on, they would have to label and put on products, is an extra cost and an extra headache that they don't need. And there's a cost of living crisis. The last thing you want to do is drive up prices, because businesses have to take on an extra cost. Mark Burnley is still frustrated by Brexit. More than a year from Britain's formal withdrawal from the EU on terms agreed by Boris Johnson's government, exporting the goods his company produces hasn't got any easier for the London-based manufacturer. Describing it as the same nightmare week after week, he says. A lot more time is spent with things going wrong. The EU really feels like the hardest place in the world to ship things to sometimes. And, we've covered this ad nauseum, because we know that being a third country is deeply disadvantaged, unless you're like the United States or whatever. But the agreement that the UK has with the EU means that exporting goods into the EU is expensive, and it's a bureaucratic nightmare. And also it's a problem importing as well. Although it's not as bad as it could be, it's going to get much worse later. For the past 7 decades, the company barely runs. KMAT has made and sold tea trolleys, trays and hot plates from its factory just off the Old Kent Road to customers including the British royal family. It's thought that KMAT's wares are used by the Queen, celebrating her Platinum Jubilee this week on her Coronation World Tour. The company sells goods in 40 countries around the world. But leaving the EU had added to Beryley's costs and makes selling items abroad more difficult. There's loads of things that I could have been doing if it wasn't for these problems. We could do things that take us forward rather than backward. He says, Peter, thanks so much for that super chat. Bring back pounds, shillings, and pence. Don't say it too loudly, but yes, I think that would be the next step. That's what Brexiteers would be very happy to do. Guineas as well. And what else? Penny farthings, the bicycle with the large wheel at the top and at the front and the small wheel at the back. In the video I covered this morning, some of these ideas probably made it into that 2000 idea list. We didn't see the whole list, but I would imagine pound, shillings and pence was probably included in that as well. Get rid of decimalisation, go back to what it was before. But people who were around, that demographic is not very big and it's getting smaller all the time. The people who remember using pounds, shillings and pence, the people who remember dealing in that or dealt with it, in their daily life. That section of the population is getting smaller all the time. We're talking about pre-1971, 51 years ago. Like, who are the Tories? Who would be the Tories enticing with this? But yes, it's definitely something, we laugh about it, but how many things have we laughed about that have come to pass? Anyway, it goes on to say, thanks for that super chat, Peter. Official figures show the UK exports to the EU remain significantly below pre-Brexit levels, despite some recovery from an initial plunge in January 2021 at the end of the transition period. Exports have fallen 40% on the month as trading adapted to new red tape and border delays, but came back to finish last year down 11% compared to 2018. The year before, the year used by the Office for National Statistics, as is the most reliable comparison before Brexit stockpiling and the COVID pandemic influenced trade flows. Yes, it's important to compare with 2018, not 2019. 2019, there was a lot of stockpiling in preparation for Brexit. And in 2020, of course, there was the pandemic. So 2018 is a good yardstick to use, or meter measurement to use. However, concern is mounting that fresh Brexit roadblocks are looming as the government threatens to tear up the Northern Ireland Protocol, which covers trade between Great Britain, Northern Ireland and Ireland. Despite Boris Johnson's claiming to have got Brexit done, his government now views the central plank of his deal is broken. Not something that Johnson will actually say. It's the protocol that's the problem, not Brexit. But the protocol is a consequence of Brexit. How can Brexit be perfect, but the protocol flawed? And you've yet to hear, and this is something that popped up on my feed on Twitter, is that even the Labour Party in Scotland are refusing to talk about Brexit, refusing to criticise Brexit. That's not good. A meter rule, not a yardstick. Anyway, and business will tell you it's unhelpful. There's a sense of, oh God, here we go again, says Bayerly, who worries that KMAT will suffer if the EU responds with fresh trade barriers. Rapperell, who was Theresa May's special advisor on Europe during the first round of Brexit negotiations, says companies could start dusting down their old no-deal Brexit plans if the situation worsens. Any business will tell you it's unhelpful, he says. In this case, a lot of them are just getting on with it and they just have to make the best of it. But what they don't want is constantly changing trade rules with the UK and the EU. Now, there may actually be some good news when it comes to this. Rushing, thanks so much for that super chat. If you order a pound of sausages, approximately how many grams of sausages are you getting? So I think a pound is half a kilo. Yeah, 454 grams. Well done, people. Anu in fancy for 560 liters of beer. Yes, very nice. 2.2 pounds to the kilo. The reason I know pounds is because I know that in Ireland they used to sell sugar by the pound. So it's 2 pounds of sugar. So that's sort of matched up with a kilo, more or less. £8 a gallon. Not with inflation. Okay. So there could be some good news that there is a belief that the UK is perhaps not diverging as far as we thought when from EU standards, that there is a plan to not diverge any further from EU standards. And this, of course, would help businesses, or maybe not help them, but cause less damage to businesses. Because as we said here, if the rules keep changing, then it's problematic for businesses. So imagine you're exporting something into the EU. You have to follow a particular standard. Well, if that standard changes, then you'll have to complete all the new paperwork. But if the UK and the EU are aligned, then there's less paperwork to complete. So this is something that would help, but it's just a rumor at the moment. I don't know if it's completely true. It would of course help businesses in a way. Any business will tell you it's unhelpful. In this case, a lot of them are just... Yeah, sorry, I said that. Despite business concerns of retaliation from Brussels, the government has insisted that pushing ahead is the right thing to do. The UK's solution to fix the problems with the protocol and protect the Belfast Good Friday Agreement will cut costs for businesses, remove unnecessary paperwork, and protect UK and EU markets. Look, I think we have sort of seen examples of this, or possible examples of this. When it comes to the protocol, and I said this before, I think what the UK government is doing is they're throwing a tantrum. The EU comes forward with an idea, the UK government reject it, and then a few months later they accept it and present it as their own. In the same way as what they did with Keir Starmer during the pandemic. Starmer said, we need to go into a lockdown, we need to have a circuit breaker. Johnson and the Tories said, no, that's a ridiculous idea. You're trying to damage business. You're trying to damage the economy. And then a few weeks later, they did exactly that. And I think this is what's happening with the Northern Ireland Protocol. The UK government is implementing it slowly. They're lazy as well. And this is something you have to also remember. The Brexiteers are lazy. And we've seen it when it came to the trade deals. They just sign whatever. Just give us whatever agreement you want. Look, that's why it was so one-sided when it came to Australia. Australia got a much better deal than the UK did. Australian farmers were happy. UK farmers were not. Because the people signing the trade deals are either incompetent or just lazy. And I think maybe it's a bit of both. Yeah, just sign something because we need to present it to Brexiteers as a victory. And I think it's the same with the protocol. Yeah, we'll just implement it, but we'll try and create problems, get the EU to do the heavy lifting, get the EU to solve these problems, and then we'll present it as, we solved the problem. There could, however, be economic costs. Stefan Ball, a former chair of Philip Hammond's Council of Advisors when he was Chancellor, and now chief economist at Goldman Sachs, says that most likely outcome is a compromise deal. Still, risks of significant economic impacts loom if one isn't reached, he warned. Back in 2020, the Office for Budget Responsibility estimated that a no-deal Brexit would reduce the level of GDP by additional 2% in the long run. In addition, the escalation of tensions raises the prospect of a trade war with potential tariffs imposed on exports to the EU. But this outcome is very unlikely in our view. No, because I think what's happening is the UK government is implementing the protocol a bit slowly and not to the liking of the EU. But, it's, if somebody owes you money, think of it like this. If somebody owes you money and they say, look, I'm not going to pay it all immediately, but I'll pay you back, a little bit every week. You're probably, even though you had an agreement that they would pay you back everything straight away, it's better that it comes back, even if it's over a longer period of time, than you get nothing. And I think this is the EU's approach to a lot of this. Okay, the UK government agreed to do X, Y, and Z. They're not doing X, Y, and Z, but they've started doing X, and if we wait long enough, we'll get Y and Z as well. And they're going to complain about having to do things that they already agreed to do. But, it's the cost of working with people like this. Working with Boris Johnson and his government, working with Brexiteers. Even with the current deal, the OBR, the Treasury's economic forecast, predicts Brexit will cost the economy 4% of GDP over 15 years, double the long-term impact of the scarring from the COVID pandemic. Yeah, once again, Brexit is twice as bad as the pandemic, and we saw the damage the pandemic has done. Trade figures suggest UK exporters are already feeling the pinch, according to the Netherlands Bureau for Economic Policy Analysis, which tracks trends in global trade. Goods exports in March from advanced economies, including the UK, US, Japan, and Eurozone, were 2% above the monthly average for 2018. After adjusting for inflation in the UK, however, real exports were almost 22% down in the same month. So while exports are recovering for other countries, the UK is still lagging. Some sectors have suffered more dramatic hit than others. Exports of clothing and footwear, something Jacob Rees-Mogg said would be much cheaper, to the EU are both down by almost 60% compared to 2018. Meat exports have plunged by almost 25%, vegetables and fruit by 40%, while car exports are down by more than a quarter. You would expect these things to recover, but they're not. So you can see here total exports down 8.3%. So total UK exports for 2021 were down 8.3% in 3 years. Clothing down 37%. And if you think about it, why are these all down? For example, clothing or fruit and vegetables, because they rely a lot on people from the EU who used to work in these industries. Now they're not working in those industries because of the ending of freedom of movement. So other sectors probably are not as affected. The car is down 27%, but that's not really related to freedom of movement. It's more affected by rules of origin. Peter, thanks so much for that super chat. We're converting to Imperial to trend with all the other countries around the world that use Imperial. America. Although American Imperial is different. So even if you say, well, we're gonna be like America, yeah, but America's as far as a gallon in America, well, I'm not sure why that was removed. A gallon in America is different to a gallon in the UK, as far as I know. So when they do miles per gallon, I think it's different, for cars. What about is there a metric for watts? Like we have kilowatt hour, so that's 1,000 watts. Is there an imperial measurement for watts, for power? I'm not sure. Horsepower? Is it? My computer's horsepower? I don't know. Archima, great to see you on the stream. So, moving on from Brexit, yeah, it's the same nightmare. Things are not going to improve anytime soon, unless, as we know, rejoining the single market and the customs union is part of the plan, but it's not the case unfortunately, for the foreseeable future. So let's move on to Boris Johnson. Remember, guys, to smash the like button as you pop on. That'd be greatly appreciated. It says here, Tory MP John Stevenson submits letter of no confidence in Boris Johnson as it happened. This is from 5 hours ago. Just says here, Carlisle Conservative MP John Stevenson says he has submitted a letter of no confidence in Boris Johnson, in Prime Minister Boris Johnson. So there's a bit of a summary here I just want to touch on. Boris Johnson is facing mounting calls for a confidence vote in his leadership that would put his position under threat within days, as 2 more MPs suggest they have lost faith in the government. A list of Conservatives who sent a letter of no confidence publicly urged the Prime Minister to quit or criticised his leadership. I think we're getting to the stage, as I said at the beginning of the stream, you know, we've been down this road before and Boris Johnson has come through pretty much unscathed. But I think at this stage, this is something different because there are letters going in. Kilowatt hours measured in candles. Well said, Draconic. Thanks for that super chat. Yes. British thermal units. Well, the metric version is kilowatt. Ah, okay. BTUs. Now, how much does a light bulb consume? do the calculation, Night Raven. So yeah, as I said, we're seeing more and more MPs putting in letters. Why is that happening? It's probably because they see that Johnson he's no longer somebody they feel can win elections. So they feel that if there was an election held tomorrow, they would lose their seat. Or well, Johnson would not win the election. The Tories would not win. They would take a massive beating, thrashing. And the polling, has been consistently 4 candles. The polling has been consistently pointing to Labour picking up a lot of seats, and the only people who are really on Johnson's side are really the front bench. Well, they're not going to undermine the Prime Minister, at this stage, unless one of them decides to resign or to send in a letter. It's generally the backbenchers that are doing this. But give it enough time and a significant number doing it, then Johnson will be called to the 1922 committee. Now, it's not a guarantee that he would actually lose a confidence vote. But we've been here before as well with Theresa May. Theresa May won her confidence vote and then she was gone a few weeks later. So it's not a guarantee that he would win the confidence vote, but it's not a guarantee that he would go as well if he lost it. The former minister, Andrea Leadsom, has criticised Boris Johnson unacceptable failings of leadership following the publication of the Sue Gray report. In a letter to her constituents published on social media, Leadsom said she believed it was extremely unlikely that senior leaders were unaware of what was going on. So the knives are being sharpened, and Johnson is getting them in his back here. Once again, this is not a former minister, so it's not an active minister. And although Andrea Leadsom is quite significant figure within the Conservatives, we're still waiting for a higher profile figure to stick the knife in. The former Foreign Secretary William Hague has said that the Prime Minister is in real trouble and that Tory MPs are moving towards having a ballot on his leadership. Allies of Boris Johnson have been hopeful that he had escaped unscathed, but Lord Hague said it was proving to be one of those sort of low fuse explosions in politics. Yeah, it's a sort of drip that's ebbing away at Johnson's support, and there will be a tipping point where enough letters have been reached. It will be sent to the 1922 committee, and there will be a vote of confidence or no confidence in Johnson. But he still has an 80-seat majority, so I don't know if that would be. I don't know if there is enough support within the party to get rid of him. So at the end of the day, it's the party that will decide. If the party decides Boris Johnson has to go, the MPs will do as they're told. There is a certain amount of loyalty to Johnson. These are mainly due to the ones who came in 2019. The ones who came in on Get Brexit Done. For these MPs, they in a way, a lot of them have nothing to lose by supporting Johnson, because they're likely to be out at the next election. They came in on Get Brexit Done. Some of them won seats with razor-thin majorities. There's I forget what his name is, Jonathan Gills, is that his name? I call him the House of Commons hooligan. I think he has a majority of something like 300. So he's out on his arse at the next election, unless Labour really mess up. So, he came in with Boris Johnson. Going against Johnson isn't really going to help him, and supporting Johnson isn't going to really harm him. He's out on his arse anyway, so he might as well, show the party that he cares, or show his electorate. Yeah, I'm going to go down fighting. So it's about protecting themselves first of all, and if there is an election at the next election and if he's running again, he may feel I might be able to scrape by, and I'll just remind my constituents everything that I did for them. Remember all the times I stood up in the House of Commons and said, what I was doing for, I forget what his constituency is. Anyway, because Boris Johnson didn't stand as the patron saint of virtue, and people knew who they were electing. The Science Minister George Freeman said he urged caution amongst Tory MPs considering submitting letters of no confidence in the Prime Minister. He didn't stand as the patron saint of virtue. Yeah, we knew he was a liar. You knew he was a liar. You knew what you were voting for. And this is something that really, pisses me off about the electorate, that, people were asked, Boris Johnson, are you going to, back in 2019, are you going to vote for Boris Johnson? Yeah, because I like the way he ruffles his hair, or I like the way he's a bit of a clown, or I like the way that he's a bit funny, or he doesn't take things too seriously. That was back in 2019, okay? Before Brexit and before the implementation of Brexit and before the pandemic. Some people still think he's doing a good job, but I think now people realize, yes, Keir Starmer is wooden, Keir Starmer is boring, but I prefer to have somebody who's wooden and boring than to have a clown. And that's what Johnson is, a clown. And I think, the fun part is over. Dominic Cummings has accused Sue Gray of not properly investigating the alleged ABBA party in Boris Johnson's flat during lockdown, saying the music was so loud that dozens of people working in the office downstairs could hear it. You don't cross Dominic Cummings because he keeps the receipts. I wouldn't be surprised if it's him or somebody connected to him that leaked all these photos to the media and got this investigation kick-started. ITV's Paul Brand reports that there are rumours that the Prime Minister has begun phoning MPs who have voiced doubts about his leadership and hinted that they could be promoted if they offer him their support. Trying to bribe MPs, that's not going to work. Because, if Johnson has become toxic for the party, you don't want to be associating yourself with him. So I'm thinking of the Andrew Bridgens or people like this. What can Boris Johnson offer Andrew Bridgen? I'll make you health secretary. Andrew is not that stupid. He's not very clever, but he's not that stupid. And you'd be like, no. You're going down, and I don't want to be associated with you. So, it is quite desperate to be trying to bribe MPs into making them ministers. Or promoted, maybe not a minister, but, an undersecretary or something. Boris Johnson has written to civil servants justifying plans to cut 91,000 jobs, saying the government needs to reduce its costs, just as many families are doing. Following the announcement, the civil servants' flagship graduate scheme was to be frozen for at least a year to help reduce the headcount by 20%. The Prime Minister tried to assure officials that support would be provided to anyone affected. This is another part of this red meat. Look, we're cutting the civil service. That should keep a few unhinged Tories happy. Some of these backbenchers that care about, we need to cut costs, we need to make the government smaller. Because something that Johnson did in 2019 was he brought a lot of these different factions together under Get Brexit Done. And now he's trying to, spin a number of different plates. He's trying to keep a number of different people happy. He's trying to keep the racists happy. He's trying to, with different policies, he's trying to keep these small government Tories happy by, by saying we're going to cut civil service jobs. He's trying to keep a number of different factions happy, and in some cases, keeping one happy upsets the other, and in a sense, it shows how he knows he's near the end. There's no confidence there. Shadow Foreign Secretary to the Treasury James Murray said that the government hasn't prepared for the rising demand for travel. The Labour MP told Sky News that Labour has been warning that there would be problems after the travel sector cut staff during the pandemic and now struggling to cope with the increased demand. It's something I'll talk about a little later in the stream. Meanwhile, the Arts Minister, Stephen Parkinson, said the industry should have recruited people already for the increased demand of travel. Yes, damn you, airline industry. Why didn't you hire more people? Airline industry, freedom of movement ended, you idiot. Asked if government could do more to help the aviation sector during the pandemic, Lord Parkinson told Sky News that the government had helped, but didn't explain how, but put the blame squarely on the travel sector. We have to defend Boris Johnson. Yeah, we added this massive obstacle called the ending of freedom of movement, and that made it more difficult for airlines, for airports to rehire staff that they had laid off during the pandemic. Because if you think about it, a lot of the people who were laid off, who were not furloughed, were maybe contract workers, people who are, working for agencies. Those people were not given furlough; they were just laid off, and they had no support, and they had bills to pay, and they had, families to feed. So what did they do? They went and found jobs in other sectors. Or their agencies found them jobs in other places, and they haven't returned. And it's difficult to hire people during during a crisis like this. But it's also more difficult if you're like an airline or an airport, because there are certain security checks that need to be carried out on people. You are doing stuff in the airport where there's a high level of security. You can't just pull people off the street and say, yeah, you work, checking people's bags and stuff. But I used to be, never mind. That's okay. We just need people. Doesn't matter what you've done in before or your ideology. We just want you working in the airport. No, it doesn't really work like that. It's different from any other sector. And, you know, it's difficult to get these people working. And then, of course, because of Brexit, because of the ending of freedom of movement, other airports or other airlines that are not based in the UK, you know, are still struggling, but they have access to a bigger market, a bigger work market. So it's easier for them to bring people in from different countries in the EU. It's more difficult for the UK, thanks to Brexit, thanks to the Brexiteers, thanks to the people like Lord Parkinson who were saying, no, it's not our fault, it's your fault. The former Children's Commissioner for England has called for free school meals to be extended to all families on universal credit, while acknowledging that poverty has not been tackled in this country well enough. Speaking on BBC Radio 4 Today programme, Anne Longfield, who is chairing the year-long Commission on Young Lives, said she had supported the extension of the free school meals to all families receiving the benefit for some time. Yeah, this is quite sad that during a cost of living crisis, the idea that, should we provide free school meals to families on universal credit? That should be automatic. It shouldn't require a commissioner to suggest it to the government. Check bags? Well, I was just stopping to use the toilet, but okay. Rectal scans coming soon. So frustrated with the news today, not focusing enough on Brexit being a major cause in the aviation sector. Yes, Katie. There's still this idea that, it's nothing to do with Brexit, or we don't mention Brexit, but the fact that many of these airlines and the airports can't hire people back because they aren't available, because many of them, there were people from the EU who worked in the airports and the airlines. They've gone back to their countries. They were told by Brexiteers, we don't want you here we don't want you here anymore. And it's very difficult to get those people back. So you have to replace them with British people. But many British people don't want to do those jobs. Did someone say UBI? Consequential. Anyway, moving on. Sticking with the letters being sent to the 1922 committee. It says here, 28th Tory MP submits a letter of no confidence in Boris Johnson.
And just breaking away from innovation for a moment, just a bit of breaking news to bring you. In the last few minutes, another MP has submitted a letter to the 1922 committee. That's John Stevenson. Mr. Freeman, do you have confidence in the Prime Minister?
Yes, I'm getting on with my job as his Minister for Science, Research and Innovation. I mean, the truth is, Prime Ministers are always juggling. Tony Blair was doing it, Gordon Brown was doing it. It's a full-time job. I would just say this. In terms of the Sue Gray report, I read it very carefully. And what really shocked me, actually, was the culture of staff drinking in Number 10, which the Prime Minister has rightly taken full responsibility for. I think most of us were shocked. The odd gathering of people who are working together, whether in the NHS or in the heart of the government bunker, at the end of a day for a slice of pizza when they're already close is one thing, but it's the culture.
The NHS workers were not doing that. Why are these Tories always saying, throwing in, teachers and NHS workers were, having a slice of pizza or a few drinks or whatever. This is the second time this has happened, but it's happened on other occasions. But for example, what was it? Boris Johnson, not Boris Johnson. What's his name? Michael Fabricant said the same thing. He later apologized to the NHS workers, not to the teachers, but teachers and NHS workers were not having parties after work.
Culture of routine drinking at the workplace, I think, was so extraordinary. The Prime Minister's rightly expressed shock at that. He's personally apologized to the staff who were.
My question about all of this is, Boris Johnson's in charge. So Boris Johnson was at a podium where he was saying, he was at a lectern where he was saying, remember people, don't mix with people outside your your bubble, or don't mix with people outside your household. You're allowed, to just to do exercise. You're only allowed to do X, Y, or Z. And then he went from there into a room where people were having a party. And at no stage did he go, you're not supposed to be doing this. It's not like he was some intern, who was there for the week, making photocopies, and he couldn't really intervene because they wouldn't listen to him. He's the bloody Prime Minister. He is their boss. At no stage did Boris Johnson say, hey, wait a minute, guys, what the hell are you doing here? You shouldn't be doing this. Get the hell out. Go home. You're not supposed to be having a party here. You're not supposed to be drinking wine here. You're not supposed to be eating cheese or having a cake or whatever. You're not supposed to be doing this. Why didn't Johnson do that? Because he doesn't care.
Treated badly for raising it. And he's put in place and implemented all the recommendations that Sue Gray has set out. I mean, in the end, I think this is a Prime Minister that won a huge mandate at the last election. And I was a Remainer, but I recognise the mandate of the Brexit vote. And I recognise the mandate the Prime Minister has. We've got to deal with some very, very serious, the Ukraine war, the cost of living crisis. We put 37 billion extra now in this year. Big announcement from the Chancellor last week. And driving the economic conditions for growth for people around the country. In the end, the Prime Minister will be accountable for this. I understand that colleagues are worried and I respect their decision, but I'm busy getting on with the job in government and making sure that we are dealing with the cost of living crisis and creating a high growth economy for tomorrow.
Maybe he would be in a different position if he wasn't a member of the government. If he was just a backbencher, he might have something else to say. Anyway. Let me read some of your... we're almost halfway through the stream. So we'll have our comedy moment in a moment. His cosplay game is quite shy, to be honest. If he was a proper leader, he wouldn't have got to that point. It wouldn't have got to that point, yes. Because it would have been clear, from day one, these are the rules. How can you be telling people to follow rules and then to go back into your own office and see people, having the crack, as they say in Ireland, having lots of fun, and you don't, it doesn't register with you, actually, people should not be doing this. Once again, he doesn't care. He's like, I've told the public to follow these rules. Look, I just want to sit down and have a glass of wine, a piece of cheese, have a bit of cake with, Dominic Cummins, Dominic Raab, whoever, let's just have a bit of a relaxing drink. We don't have to wear masks or anything because, we are exempt. Johnson expressing shock at drinking in number 10 reminds me of Louis stating how shocked he was to find gambling going on in Rick's Cafe in Casablanca. He has no moral compass. No. He has shelves for his comics. Cool. Not sure who that is. Okay. Anyway, before we go on to the next topic, of course, we're going to have our comedy moment. I hope you enjoy this. And then I'll see you back in just a jiffy for some more serious stuff.
What you have to remember is that by going back to imperial measures, it's a Brexit benefit. It means that we can trade with all these other countries in the world. Liberia, Myanmar, and yes, the US, although they also have cups and sticks and quartz. But again, we can add that to that beautiful group of imperial measurements. Britain once ruled the waves, and the Conservative Party are working really hard to get us back into the water, which is why we're also going to introduce leeches and backstreet abortions and rickets, because that's going to save the NHS a fortune treating children's sporting injuries. These lefty wokies who are trying to push us into some kind of exciting future are forgetting our British heritage. And I use that word advisedly because when we colonised these countries, everybody there were feral before we came along. Trying to modernise ourselves is like spitting in the face of Oliver Cromwell. You've got to look at countries that have tried to move forward. I mean, take Ukraine. It's not working out very well for them, is it?
Wonderful. Oh, very good. Okay, moving on. So I want to talk a little bit about the cost of living crisis here. This is very concerning. UK credit card borrowing rises at fastest annual rate for 17 years. Annual growth for credit card borrowing hit 11.6% in April. Credit card borrowing is rising at its fastest annual rate in 17 years, the Bank of England said on Tuesday, with analysts warning a recession looks likely, increasingly likely, as growing numbers of households go into debt to make ends meet. You know, there was a time when borrowing, credit card debt, massive credit card debt, pointed to an economy that is booming. People are going out using their credit cards to buy all sorts of things like color TVs, flat screen TVs. That was the one in the 2000s. People are going out. They were buying a new iPhone, or they were buying a new computer, or buying maybe even a car on using a credit card, and then just worrying about the payments later. But instead, what's happening is people are desperate for access to money. They're not going to banks. They're using credit cards. Okay, I need to pay the bills, use the credit card. I need to buy food, use the credit card, and worry about paying it back later. And this is potentially creating a massive debt bubble. The annual growth rate for credit card borrowing hit 11.6% in April, the highest figure since November 2005. The rate for all credit card consumer credit increased to 5.7% in April from 5.2% in March, rising faster than any time since or just before the pandemic. The latest data shows a divided nation, analysts said, with millions borrowing money to buy food while others splash out on treats and luxuries using their credit cards. The Money Advice Trust, and the charity that runs National Debt Line, said the Bank of England's consumer credit figures were an ominous sign of the mounting pressure on household finances. It added, using credit to cover essentials like food and energy is often a sure sign of financial difficulty. Prices are rising, interest rates are rising, and a recession looks increasingly likely at some point this year, said Jadid Inar, credit reference firm Equifax UK. The government and the Bank of England have taken steps to temper the full impact of the cost of living crisis, but the measures announced so far will only soften the blow. We have already seen a rise in the number of people struggling to pay bills and pay off existing debts, and much of the demand for new credit is by those looking for a way to ride out the crisis. And you can see here this eye-watering rise here in the annual growth rate of credit card borrowing. So it was going down in 2019. It completely collapsed in 2021. As people were cutting back. People were not using their credit card, not getting we're not borrowing with their credit cards, and then of course it shot up in 2022. I would have imagined that it would have been, a lot of people were using credit cards during the pandemic, purchasing things online, but probably not getting into debt over it, not borrowing with it. Households are struggling with the surge in energy prices after the cap rose, adding £700 to the average bill. Measures announced by the Chancellor last week will mean hundreds of pounds in one-off payments are being distributed to households over the coming months, but poverty campaigners say millions will still struggle to pay for food as the cost of household items soars. UK consumers have now put more than $3 billion on credit cards in the past 3 months alone, and another $1.6 billion on other forms of credit, some of which will be inevitable, some of which will have inevitably been used to cover bills and meet other essential costs. Individuals borrowed an extra 1.4 billion in consumer credit last month, up from 1.3 billion rise in March, said the bank. This was split evenly between 700 million extra on credit cards and 700 million on other forms of credit, such as car finance and personal loans. Once again, this is very concerning, because it's not, credit card borrowing normally goes up when the economy is doing well, but the economy is not doing well, and people of course are using it to pay for essentials, and that should not be the case. Let me read some of your comments. How about we forgive all debts and give everyone £2,000? That would help, like a UBI, for example. I said it there. Gove used his credit card to chop up his powder, according to a friend. Don't worry, lads, the Queen is going to sell all her assets and help her subjects through the crisis. Don't get me started on that. The whole idea that you have a billionaire having a party that's paid for by the taxpayer. The Jubilee is a party for the Queen, okay? And the royals, not just the Queen, but all the royals as well. They all celebrate it as well, and it's been paid for by the taxpayer. Why can't she pay for it herself? Or if she can't afford it, just don't have it. No. Yeah, I know the response would be, no, it's not, for her. It's a thank you to her. Sorry, Cromwell is the reason we value Parliament as an institution so much. Agreed about genocide. Mass civil disobedience. We'll see the Tory tax haven kitty come back to the UK, and they'll snap up repossessed properties. And of course, there's always an opportunity during a crisis like this. Many people will lose their homes. People won't be able to pay the rent. They'll move out. They'll be kicked out. And these properties, the value will drop, and someone will come in and buy it all up really cheaply. So there's always, we always think, well, no, who could actually benefit from this? Yes, somebody is always benefiting from every crisis. So sticking with the cost of living crisis, I just want to show you this clip.
There have been claims that the cost of the cheapest food on the market is rising proportionally faster than other things, making it even tougher for those really struggling. Well, the Office for National Statistics have had a closer look to ask if that's true. Have a look at this. This is a broad overview of what they found. That blue line at the top there, that shows the rate of price rises for all food and soft drinks that are usually used when calculating inflation. But remember, that covers a huge range of things, including expensive items like steak and seafood, things that people really struggling are probably unlikely to be buying. So they've also had a look at a more specific group of products. That's the red line. It essentially shows price increases of the cheapest versions of 30 real everyday staples. And look, as you can see, the two actually rose in quite similar stead with each other. Budget items by 6%, overall 6.7%. In essence, it shows cost rises are just as bad for the cheaper products, but not worse. There's a real discrepancy between items too. Here are just 10 of the 30 things that were surveyed. Have a look. You can see big rises for some things fell away, albeit fewer things. There are actually a total of 10 budget items that rose by over 10%, which is...
This is a very interesting graph. So you can see here at the top, pasta has risen 50%. Its price increased by 50%, while potatoes have actually dropped in price. Well, potatoes are, are pretty much a raw material, but pasta is a processed material, so it requires energy to be made. And if you look at all of these items, a lot of them, with the exception of pizza, a lot of them require, significant amount of energy to be put into them to be produced. So, for example, pasta, bread, crisps, rice, maybe regarding the drying of it, on the processing of it, biscuits as well, for example. So a lot of these, maybe they have to be transported. There's a cost with that, a massive cost with that, but also the actual production of them, which is expensive. Because the price of energy is up, it trickles down into all of these products.
Well above the average across the products. And there are a few real outliers. Look at this. Budget pasta up 50% and budget minced beef up 16%. Not good news at all if spag bowl is one of your staples. And some items have fallen in price too. Look, budget potatoes down by 14% and cheese down by 7%. But the reality still holds that even if the items themselves are rising at the same rate, poorer households will be hit harder by those rises. That's partly because those people have less disposable income, but it's also because of this. This shows the population split up into 10 parts by income. And look, the poorest, the richest 10% over here, they're experiencing inflation of about 7.9%, but the poorest 10th over here, look, much higher, experiencing inflation of around 11%. This research also found there's a big difference in cost between the lowest value items and the next lowest cost versions. It really shows how careful less well-off shoppers are needing to be.
Once again, this idea that it's more expensive to be poor. It's cheaper to be rich because you're less impacted by these costs. Hawaiian pizza. No, not Hawaiian. That's a blasphemy. Let me read some of your comments. Food is a greater proportion of your budget when you're poorer. The cost is also more expensive due to not being able to buy in bulk. Access to vehicle. That's, yes, Giblet, that's a fantastic point you made there. So, you know, if you don't have a car, you'll have to rely on public transport. If you have to rely on public transport, you're not going to be able to carry pounds, kilos of bags. You're going to get a smaller amount of shopping, which will mean that you're going to end up spending more. If you're able to buy in bulk, if you're able to buy large quantities of cheaper products, you're going to save money. But in order to do that, you'll need to have a car or at least access to one. And then you'll need to pay for fuel as well, the insurance or whatever. So a lot of people, you know, one of the first things they do is, one of the first questions they ask themselves is during a cost of living crisis, can I get rid of the car? Do I need a car? Because if I get rid of the car, I save on insurance, I save on fuel, I save on tax, I save on maintenance, things like this. Can I get by without it? But by doing that, it creates other problems, of course, and it makes it can make life much significantly more expensive. Cahill, thanks so much for that super chat. In fairness, budget pasta was probably 29p a kilo before. I know somebody well, this was some years ago, who worked in the pasta industry here in Italy, and I remember them telling me that the cost to make the pasta is extremely low. But you know, they of course are impacted by energy prices, and you know, the margins were extremely thin, and the impact of small changes in raw material costs like flour or water or whatever, and of course energy has a massive impact, and that has to be passed on. So if you're charging 29p a kilo for pasta yesterday, and the price of, you know, it can force you to charge maybe 39p the next day. If somebody is, you know, trying to save money, it may seem a small impact, but you know, these things add up. 10p for the pasta, 10p or 20p for milk, sugar, tea, things like this. Just basic things that you need to buy, things that you need in your home, bread. You know, small accumulations in price there have an impact at the end of the week or at the end of the month. And of course, also if you're trying to save money on food to pay the bills for gas and electricity, this is, you know, it creates more problems for ordinary people. Pizza topping with flags. Once again, this is a whole idea that there are people struggling at the moment, and the response is, yeah, let's throw a massive party to a billionaire because she's old. Pasta is wheat-based, and wheat prices have rocketed. Your access to shops can limit you. You live near a big supermarket. All good. If you have one or two shops in your neck of the woods, the prices are high. US has food deserts. Yeah, and that's I saw a very interesting documentary about that as well, about the people who live miles and miles, kilometers and kilometers away from a supermarket. The nearest they have is maybe they have nothing, or they have some like convenience store or mini market, which of course charge more. And if that's all you have, a bigger proportion of your income is going to be spent on food. If the only access you have to a market is something that's like a convenience store, like a Spar or something like that, which normally charge more because of the convenience. The poorest are being milked, yes. Is the cheap meat from Australia swimming to the UK, or is it still in Australia? Now, you're not going to see that for a while. It'll be 2026, I think. So I wanted to cover a few stories on airlines. Then maybe we'll talk a little bit about Ukraine, but I want to cover this first. There's two stories here. This one about Ireland, and then this one as well. Air travel chaos could get worse.
Many had already been waiting before the check-in desks opened. These passengers at Manchester Airport had been advised by the airline TUI to arrive extra early.
It's not good when you're waiting that long, is it? When you're getting told to come 4 hours and we haven't got the test on, that's important, that.
And then there were the cancellations.
After we queued up for so long, we saw the screen again and it said cancelled. We went and asked one of the TUI operators and they just said, yes, it's the whole holiday's cancelled. That's all we knew about it, and we're still in the dark now.
TUI has cancelled nearly 200 flights from Manchester over the next month. It's incredibly frustrating for many passengers hoping to finally have a summer holiday after staying home during the pandemic.
No, you won't be going today.
These were the scenes from the airport over the weekend. Police having to tell holidaymakers headed for Greece that their flight had been cancelled. Among those due...
It's not good if the police are there to tell people. Why are the police there? Maybe it's because they don't have the staff.
to fly to Kos was Liam West for a beachside wedding with his partner Kelly. It's already been pushed back 3 years because of COVID.
It was horrible. And obviously having to come home, and obviously we were up all night. Obviously my partner was just crying all the time. I just didn't know what to do.
They already have family out there, and other guests headed out this weekend. Liam's mum, Amanda, is one of them. She's distraught. The wedding now can't go ahead until July, and she can't afford to pay for the trip again.
And I get upset myself over it all.
Why are you so upset?
I just want him to be happy. I keep thinking it's not happy until it's got her down the aisle. Or the beachfront, what they've always wanted. They've always wanted it. Always.
TUI have apologised and blamed ongoing challenges with their operation. They, like other airlines, are experiencing staff shortages after losing workers during the pandemic. EasyJet and British Airways...
And losing staff during the pandemic and not being able to hire new staff or not being able to hire the same staff back. The same staff back, well, you can't hire them back because they've gone to work in different sectors or maybe different airlines, or because some of them were from the European Union, they're back in the European Union.
Have also cut flights.
We've been saying to the industry that they need to prepare for this. They need to have the staff that they need to make sure people can get away and enjoy holidays. There's been many months where we've been back on the track, particularly since the vaccination to this moment, and the industry should have been recruiting people.
Heathrow.
Once again, the minister saying, yeah, it's the airline's fault. They should have hired people. But they can't hire people because there are no people to hire. And even if they did want to bring people in from the European Union, well, there are restrictions because they need visas, because of the Home Office. And I can imagine what's going to happen over the next number of weeks is you're going to have the airlines go to select committees, explain the problem, the airports explaining the problem to the Transport Secretary, the Transport Secretary then talking about what the government are not doing, and then finally the Home Office will be explaining how, well, we need to, keep an eye on people coming in, and we don't want to open up the floodgates, because that would of course upset, people who voted to end freedom of movement. We have to keep the Brexiteer racists happy.
Alone has 12,000 vacancies, including baggage handlers and security staff. But getting clearance to work airside can take months. As for the short term, it seems there's plenty more disappointment to come for many hoping to get away this week.
So to actually hire the staff and get the clearance for the security clearance, because as I said, you can't just pull people off the street and say, now you're a baggage handler. You need to actually check this person's background, and you need somebody to do that, and that takes time. You can't, otherwise what are you going to do, fast track it and just say, well, we'll carry out the checks later? That may be something that they're going to consider and say, look, we'll just take the risk. Of course, like smuggling, then a lot of people could say, oh, okay, there's an opportunity for me. I could get a job really easily, and I can do whatever the hell I want, and get away with it because the airline is desperate, or the airport is desperate. Look, I want to show you this. This is from Ireland. It says, TDs, or Irish MPs, blame rubbish contracts and failure to plan for Dublin Airport queues. Dublin Airport is going through a similar problem, but it's not Brexit related, because it's not about because Ireland didn't leave the European Union. But a lot of the workers don't want to do these jobs because the contracts that are available are pretty crappy. At the weekend, more than 1,000 passengers missed their flights, and long queues formed for people to drop off bags and pass through security checks. At leaders' questions on Tuesday, Sinn Féin leader Mary Lou MacDonald said that the Dublin Airport Authority, DAA, had grossly misjudged the staff required to deal with the tens of thousands of people travelling through the airport this summer. There are queues outside the airport. I've seen pictures of, people waiting for up to maybe even more than 8 hours. Waiting 8 hours to get checked. Not to get on the flight, just to get checked, and then you get on the flight. Like, if you have a flight at 6 a.m, normally at Dublin Airport you would arrive at maybe 5 o'clock, because there are not that many people around. So you could get through this, well, maybe not 5, maybe 4:30. And you could get through the airport pretty quickly. I was a victim of this. I haven't said it, I don't think I mentioned it on the stream, but a few months ago, I travelled to Ireland, and I was on my way back. I arrived in the airport, and there was an absolute disaster. Now, not as bad as it is today, but it was pretty bad, and I missed the flight. And I had to, I arrived with Ryanair. I arrived at the gate, which is, if anyone knows Dublin Airport, the Ryanair gate is as far away as possible from the check-in desk and the security check. So you have to run for about a mile, and I was running for a mile with stuff. When you go through the security check, you just pile everything up. You just pile everything there, and I ran for I thought I was going to have a heart attack. And I arrived at the gate, and I had missed it by 5 minutes. So I was very angry, and I had to get a flight the next day. Of course, the next day I arrived 3 hours in advance. But now you have to arrive 8 hours in advance, it seems. People before profit. So enough of my my problems. The government's failure to plan for the recovery of Ireland's tourism sector has come home to roost in a very catastrophic fashion, she said. raising issues with delays in passport applications and the high cost of hotel rooms and long queues at Dublin Airport at the weekend. People Before Profit, Richard Boyd Barrett, said the long queues at the airport were partly caused by rubbish flexible contracts for DAA workers. They can't even plan, they can't even know what hours they will have or what income they will have a week later. Is it any wonder why they have difficulty recruiting people? Yeah, it seems like a sort of 0-hour contract, it seems, and that's a ridiculous. You need to provide people with real a living wage and reasonable hours, because okay, the airport is open 24 hours a day. So I don't think it's difficult to plan, okay, how many people do we need? You can also see the peak times. It's not like most of this is all planned in advance. Okay, this is when it's probably early morning is probably the peak time. I don't know, but I imagine it's early morning is the peak time. And maybe until early afternoon, and then evening is low period, and very early in the morning is probably a low period. But I don't think it's difficult to plan timetable with staff. But it's about cutting costs. It's all about trying to, the race to the bottom. And I think a big problem also here is that a lot of this work has been outsourced. There was a time when the staff working in the airport were employed by the airport. Now it's all outsourced staff through agencies and stuff like that. They're trying to increase and reduce staff numbers, and it leads inevitably to the sort of chaos we're seeing where those chronic understaffing of the airport because of the DAA do not want to treat their security and other workers with the respect they deserve or give them a proper contract, decent pay and decent conditions. The Minister for Public Expenditure, Michael McGrath, said that it was important for Irish citizens and Ireland's reputation as an island nation that airports were well resourced. And you can't have there's actually a video here, I'll show it to you. Okay, somebody whistling, which is extremely annoying. You're waiting for 8 hours and some guy whistling. Anyway, but it's it's pretty crappy. And in order to resolve this, you need to hire people, you need to pay them well, and you need to give them decent working conditions. And until you do that, you're still going to have problems. The workers left now. They don't have the time to recruit before the demand increases. Bad management. Same happened with TNT delivery passports in the UK. 0 hours have been around for years now. It should be illegal. It's inhumane. I agree 100%. Pretty sure they've fired all the experienced staff and are rehiring now. Which, good point, Niall. And what that means is that these staff have to be trained up. So when they, when they encounter a problem, they need to go to their manager. How do I resolve this problem? But, if you have staff who have been working in the airport for years, they can resolve these problems themselves. And it's faster and it's more efficient. If, somebody's learning, they need the time to train, but also, they're not able to fix problems on their own. And this creates delays as well. 17 DA staff never turned up at Dublin. Only airport in the world where your options are a taxi and a private bus when you arrive. No public transport at all in Dublin Airport. I thought there were buses before. Maybe they've changed a lot of that. Fire and rehire is a bit like fire and rehire. Of course, during the pandemic, the airports were pretty much closed. So they laid off all the staff, And of course, you can't lay people off and then expect them just to come back immediately. And especially if the contracts, some of them want, okay, let's save some money, let's issue new contracts. And this is probably where the HR department were in charge, or they were pushing the idea, look, we can save lots of money if we just give people worse contracts, because they'll be desperate to work. Everyone wants to get back into work. They'll do whatever we say. And this is the consequence. Don't care how much cash he has, Chatty Rat. He could easily not say something and go live off his luck, but he doesn't. Not sure who that's about. It's funny how cheery singing comes across as pure evil when you're angry. Yes. All the buses to the airport were cancelled during the pandemic and haven't been reinstated. Oh my goodness. Thanks for that comment, Buxton. I didn't know about that. Why the hell haven't they been reinstated? That makes zero sense. The airport is pretty much back to normal and people are flying as before. That's insane. So that was in Ireland. This is in the UK. Holiday held carousel after TUI, as we saw, TUI said it will cancel 6 flights a day for a month. So passengers at Gatwick Airport have resorted to taking naps on baggage conveyor belts as holiday chaos continues to hit the UK. People at Heathrow Airport claimed they had never seen queues so bad, while TUI confirmed it had been cancelling at least 6 flights a day until the end of the month from Manchester. I heard Manchester is pretty bad, a bad airport to fly into or fly out of. At least 5 travellers at Gatwick were pictured attempting to get some rest in arrivals at Gatwick, despite a warning says, please do not sit or stand on the conveyor. One Twitter user suggested they'd been waiting for more than 2 hours for their bags, while EasyJet has cancelled at least 31 flights at the airport. It comes amid chaotic scenes around the UK as holidaymakers attempt to defy horrendous queues and delays to get away. At London's other main airport, Heathrow passengers tried to board flights, claiming they had never seen queues as long as those this morning. Queues for security at Terminal 3 repeatedly looped back onto themselves, with one woman joking to a friend, shall I time it? Dare we? An American couple who regularly fly over to visit their children had stood for a half an hour at one of the queues and expected to wait at least another hour. We never had this experience before, the woman, who declined to give her name, explained. There were long delays There were also long delays at Bristol Airport. Meanwhile, apologising to customers, TUI Airways said in a statement, the May half-term holiday are always an incredibly busy period, with many customers looking to get away, and this year is no different. Omitting 6 flights a day would be cut, it continued. Unfortunately, due to the ongoing challenge in our operations, we'll have to announce a small number of planned cancellations between now and the 30th of June from Manchester Airport only. And there are some pictures. I hope nobody is planning on going on holidays, flying anywhere soon, because it looks absolutely chaotic. And it's not going to get any better, as we've heard in the report. It's, David McGuinness, great to see you on the stream. Hope you're well. As I said, it's not going to get any better because the staff are not available, and in order to train up the staff, you need months. So during the summer, it's going to be probably like this, and you're probably going to see it better maybe next year, if they can find the staff and train them up. But as we saw in the Irish report, you need to make sure that the staff have good pay and conditions, otherwise they're not going to stay, or they're not going to apply for these jobs. So guys, we're almost at the end of the stream. I just wanted to cover one final story before we finish, and it involves Priti Patel. our old friend Priti Patel. First Rwanda deportation flight to leave the UK on the 14th of June, says Priti Patel. So once again, another piece of red meat thrown to the racists and the bigots. Yeah, we're going to deport people on the 14th of June. Yay, wonderful. Yes. The first deportation flight to Rwanda. Remember, Rwanda is a wonderful place, but it's also a deterrent. Flight to Rwanda carrying people who arrived in the UK without authorization is scheduled to leave on the 14th of June, Priti Patel has announced. A group of asylum seekers has been sent formal notices by the Home Office advising them they will be relocated to the East African country, officials have said. There remains few details about the numbers of people expected to be sent to Rwanda on this first flight and how they have been identified. Officials say that those who will be removed are already in detention, while the government is braced for a flurry of legal challenges over their removal. There's two ways this works. This benefits the Tories in a way. First is, look at, we're being tough on asylum seekers. That'll keep the racists happy. And then second, look at all these bloody lefty lawyers who are coming to defend these horrible individuals. That will keep the racists happy as well. The point, of course, is it's not the lawyer who decides, it's the judge. So if the government have acted unlawfully or have not followed their own rules, then the judge will say this person can't be deported. So the decision will be a judge, not an asylum-seeking defending lawyer or whatever you want to call them. The Home Office has begun issuing formal removal direction letters to those who are to be sent to Rwanda, where they will be able to rebuild their lives in safety. Once again, it's a one-way. It's not. You're not going there to be processed. You're going to be there to be dumped. It is the next step. Rebuild their lives. The next step. It is the next legal step after notices of intent were issued to dozens of people who have arrived in the UK by irregular means. The timing of the announcement will prompt suspicion. It comes amid growing pressure on Boris Johnson for a policy success, amid claims he could face a vote of no confidence as soon as next week. So if there are pictures of Priti Patel leading people in handcuffs onto a plane, this is going to give Boris Johnson a boost. Wow. The timing of the statement. In a statement, Patel said, "Our world-leading partnership Rwanda is a key part of our strategy to overhaul the broken asylum system and break the evil people smuggling business model." Pile of crap. The removal detention letter confirms that someone will be going to Rwanda and when, say officials. The Home Secretary, the Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, said the Rwanda scheme isn't about deterring criminal gangs or small boat crossings. It's about chasing headlines regardless of reality. This is completely unworkable, extortionately expensive, and deeply un-British policy. There is no proper process for identifying people who have been trafficked or tortured. Campaigners have raised alarm about access to legal advice and mental health support for people who are told they may be subject to a Rwanda removal policy. Jamie Mack, thanks so much for that super chat. I noticed there was a new Rwanda air flight direct from Heathrow to Kigali. Yes, it's Rwanda. Yeah, there's no problem getting staff, for those airlines. But if you want to go on holiday, no, to hell with you, British people. We're prioritizing sending people to the wonderful / deterrent country of deterrent country of Rwanda. Ring and Elite, thanks so much for that super chat. Oh no, Priti Patel got deported to Rwanda by mistake. Shame there's no flights back. Imagine if she was like leading people onto the plane for the cameras, and then the doors suddenly shut, and she was like, "I'm the Home Secretary. I shouldn't be on this flight. And yeah, that's what you would say, isn't it? It's like, call Boris Johnson immediately. Sorry, you're not allowed to use your phone on the plane. Oh, we could dream, can't we? It goes on to say, an Afghan man who came to the UK as a child told The Independent he tried to take his own life after being told he faced deportation to Rwanda. Hakim Khan, 32, said he would rather die after he was detained at Brook House Removal Centre this month. Home Office officials said they are speaking with all individuals to ensure the process is fully understood and people are given the appropriate support ahead of departure. Once in Rwanda, there is a generous support package, including up to 5 years of training, accommodation and healthcare on arrival in Rwanda. Under this partnership, the UK is also investing in an initial £120 million into the economic development and growth of Rwanda, the statement said. Once again, this is the thing that I don't understand. Why Rwanda, if it's such a wonderful place? If you're sending people to Rwanda to rebuild their lives, we're sending people to Rwanda and we're providing them with training, accommodation and healthcare when they arrive. It's a wonderful package. Then why can't the people choose, I don't want to go to Rwanda, I prefer to go to Canada or maybe the United States or Switzerland? Or I don't know, Barbados. Why Rwanda? Isn't it strange? You know, if it's such a wonderful place, why has it been used as a deterrent? When the deal with Rwanda was announced last month, Johnson claimed it would result in thousands of people being sent 4,000 miles to have their claims processed. Thousands. Ministers had hoped to see any early evidence that the proposition of being sent to Rwanda would break the business model of people traffickers operating in the channel. More than 4,850 people have reached the UK in small boats since the 14th of April, when the Rwanda plans were unveiled. So obviously it didn't work. This is more than 2.5 times the number that crossed the same period last year. So the government said, yeah, we're going to send people to Rwanda. That's going to deter them, and the numbers doubled. They know that many people will not be sent. We're probably you're going to see maybe 12 people sent. I think that'll be it. And it will be presented as this is a massive victory. This is the first plane load for the cameras, and then nothing will really happen because it's just a publicity stunt. It's some red meat to the racists. Look, we've deported all these people. There, see it. You've seen it yourself. Wonderful. Boris Johnson is winning, whatever that means. Monkeytron, thanks so much for that super chat. Very kind of you. Hope you're well tonight. So, this is what's happening at the moment. Boris Johnson, imperial measurements to keep a certain section of society happy. Priti Patel sending people to Rwanda to keep another section of society happy. All the while, Boris Johnson is receiving more and more letters, saying that he's not up to the job. So, guys, I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who came on tonight. Thanks to everyone for smashing the like button. Isle of Man is an idea. Yes, why don't they send them to the Isle of Man? Thanks to everyone who came on tonight. Thanks so much for the super chats. Greatly appreciated from everyone. And thanks to the moderators for doing a wonderful job. David McGuinness, thank you so much for that super chat. UK government became people traffickers. And this is what it is. You're saying that they're saying that these people traffickers are evil because they're taking people across the sea from France to Britain. And what is the UK government doing? They're taking people from Britain to Rwanda. They're not processing their asylum claims in Rwanda. They're not processing their asylum claims in Britain. They're basically taking the people, picking them up, and dropping them in Rwanda. And of course, this is going to be a legal nightmare. It's going to be a minefield. And you're going to see, this is going to go on for years. This is going to be another Windrush. But Priti Patel doesn't care because she'll be retired at that stage and she'll be, living it up on a pension, with a wonderful pension. And she's not going to face any time in prison or, she'll be protected. Disgraceful. Thanks for that super chat, David. So thanks to everyone who sent a super chat tonight. Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone who smashed the like button, and thanks to the moderator for doing a wonderful job. If you're a Patreon, remember post-stream chat on Discord, and if I don't see you there, I'll see you on Friday, same bad time, same bad channel. Have a great week and enjoy our one for the road. If I can bring it up here.
So, you're a new minister. Good job. You're walking in the footsteps of giants. William Gladstone, Roy Jenkins, Nadine Dorries. The Prime Minister wants you to know that he thinks of his ministers like his children. He's not sure exactly how many he has, and he only makes time for the new ones. Whilst in government, you must follow the Ministerial Code, which can be summed up in 5 golden rules. Always act with the highest degree of honour, integrity, and ethical... Sorry, I wish I could see your face. Just my little joke. No, here are the real rules. If you have to communicate with someone, make sure you use a method that no one else will see. Perhaps use Signal or Snapchat, or say it on GB News. If your department needs to buy something, always stop and think. Is there a friend, family member, or party donor who might be able to provide it? Remember to check with your wife, if you're still sleeping with her, or your aide, if you're not. Don't get caught doing anything embarrassing on video. So, for example, if someone's taking a selfie of you, make sure they've got it on photo mode, not video. Otherwise you stand there and you just look like a right plum. Not that that's ever happened to me. Keep in mind at all times the government's twin priorities of building back better and levelling up. And if you have any idea on what either of those might mean, drop us an email on sparklyshit@gmail.com and we'll add it to the list. Most importantly of all, get involved. If you see an argument on Twitter or in the tabloids about statues or kneeling or flags or comedy or art or museums, grab an oar and stick it in. Never think it might be beneath you. Nothing is. Because remember, if people are angrily debating the gender of a children's toy, they aren't worrying about that contract that went to your cousin. Keep all of those in mind and you'll be grand. At least until the next reshuffle where you might lose your job for absolutely no reason. And then walk into another one at your cousin's company. So not so bad. Now get out there and minister.
Wonderful. So guys, have a great week. I'll see you on Friday. Have a be safe and be good. And we'll keep our ear to the ground on what's happening with Boris Johnson, of course. Have a great night. Take care. See you soon.